Look at your hand. Really look at it. You see skin, texture, color, and depth. You feel the warmth of your blood and the solidity of your bone. You naturally assume that what you are seeing is reality, and that your eyes are like cameras simply recording the world as it is. But you are wrong. Neuroscience tells us something disturbing. You have never seen the real world. Not once. Everything you're experiencing right now, this video, the room you're sitting in, even your own body, is a hallucination generated by your brain. Evolution didn't design you to see the truth. It designed you to survive a lie. We cling to the intuition that our senses are clear windows, transparent panes of glass through which we observe an objective, pre-existing universe. We believe that when we open our eyes, the world floods in, filling our minds with the exact shapes and shades of what is actually out there. This intuition is powerful, it is persistent, and it is completely false. Consider the physical location of your brain. It is sealed inside a vault of bone, a dark, silent cavern where no light has ever entered and no sound has ever echoed. Your brain floats in a bath of salty fluid, completely isolated from the external environment it is supposed to be perceiving. It has no direct access to the stars, or the trees, or the face of your lover. It only has access to one thing: electrochemical spikes. Every sight, sound, touch, and smell you have ever known began as a stream of identical electrical impulses traveling along nerve fibers. The brain receives these frantic, coded signals and has to solve a terrifying problem. It must interpret what caused them without ever being able to step outside the skull to check its work. It is like a prisoner in a windowless cell, trying to describe the outside world based solely on Morse code messages tapped on the wall. The prisoner constructs a story, a model of what might be happening outside to explain the tapping. That story is what you call reality. You are not seeing the world. You are seeing the model your brain constructed to explain the input. The rich 3D world you experience is not the data itself. It is the user-friendly broadcast created from the data. To understand just how much of your reality is a fabrication, we have to talk about color. This is the classic entry point into the illusion, but the implications are far more radical than most people realize. In the objective universe, there is no such thing as red or blue. There is only electromagnetic radiation, waves of energy oscillating at different frequencies. When a specific wavelength, say 700 nanometers, hits the specialized cells in your retina, it triggers a chemical reaction that sends an electrical spike to your visual cortex. Your brain processes this spike and assigns it a subjective quality, the sensation of redness. The color is not out there in the apple or the rose. The color is a data compression trick used by your internal software. Evolution engineered this trick for a very specific reason. Your ancestors needed to distinguish a ripe berry from a poisonous one, or a predator from the foliage. Painting the world with arbitrary colors allowed them to spot differences in the environment quickly. If you were a bee, you would not see the same spectrum. You would see ultraviolet patterns on flowers that are completely invisible to humans, guiding you to nectar like landing lights on a runway. If you were a bat, you would see the texture of a moth's wing through sound waves. Which of these perceptions is the true version of reality? None of them. They are all just species-specific hacks, different filters applied to the same underlying quantum soup. We assume our filter is the high-definition version, but it is just as arbitrary as the bees. We are hallucinating a Technicolor movie on top of a universe that is fundamentally dark and colorless. This brings us to the core of the problem, a concept that cognitive scientist Donald Hoffman calls the interface theory of perception. To understand it, look at the device you are using right now. Whether it is a smartphone or a laptop, you are looking at a screen filled with icons. There's a little blue folder on your desktop that represents your files. Now, ask yourself, is the file inside the computer actually blue? Is it actually rectangular? Is it actually located in the lower right corner of the computer? Of course not. The reality of that file is a complex array of microscopic diodes, a chaotic stream of zeros and ones, and magnetic states on a hard drive. If the computer showed you the reality, if it showed you the raw binary code and the shifting voltages, you would never be able to use it. You would be paralyzed by the sheer volume of incomprehensible data. You would never be able to find your photo or send an email because you would be drowning in the truth of the machine's inner workings. So, the computer lies to you. It hides the complex reality of the hardware and replaces it with a simple, friendly interface. The blue folder is not a true depiction of the file. It is a symbol that allows you to interact with the file without understanding how it works. The icon is useful precisely because it is not true. It simplifies the environment so you can function. Evolution has done the exact same thing to us. Space-time is our desktop. Physical objects, chairs, trees, stars, are our icons. We tend to think that small things, like atoms, are the building blocks of reality, and that if we look close enough, we see the truth. But under this theory, atoms are just the pixels on the screen. We are wandering through a user interface that was coded over millions of years to keep us alive, not to show us the nature of objective reality. When you see a snake, you're not seeing the complex quantum field that makes up the creature. You're seeing a danger icon designed to trigger a fast reaction. If you had to compute the Schrödinger equation for every atom in the snake before you decided to run, you would be eaten. The organism that sees the truth goes extinct. The organism that sees a simple, dumbed-down simulation survives to pass on its genes. This is a difficult pill to swallow because it feels so counterintuitive. We feel that evolution should favor accuracy. We assume that the creature with the most accurate map of the territory will have the best chance of survival. But mathematical simulations of evolutionary game theory prove otherwise. When you run the numbers, comparing an organism that sees objective reality against an organism that sees only fitness payoffs, rewards, and punishments, the true seer loses every single time. It goes extinct. Truth is too expensive. It requires too much energy to process and provides too much irrelevant information. The simulation suggests that the probability that our sensory system reveals objective reality is precisely zero. We are living inside a headset. The brain is a biological rendering engine, constantly updating a virtual world that we mistake for the physical one. When you close your eyes, the world doesn't disappear, but your rendering of it does. When you dream, you construct entire universes with people, conversations, and physics, all without a single photon entering your eyes. This proves your brain is perfectly capable of generating a convincing reality without any input at all. Awake perception is just a dream that is modulated by sensory constraints. It is a controlled hallucination that is tied to the outside world just enough to prevent you from walking off a cliff, but not enough to show you what the cliff is actually made of. We are navigating a grand illusion, a simplified user interface that allows us to eat, mate, and survive, while completely obscuring the terrifying, infinite complexity of what is actually out there. You might be shaking your head right now, thinking this is all just philosophical wordplay. You probably believe that while colors might be subjective, the physical object itself, the tiger in the bush or the bus rushing down the street, must be real. It seems obvious that the reason you survive is that you see the tiger exactly where it is and exactly as it is. If your ancestors had hallucinated a rabbit instead of a predator, they would have been eaten, and you wouldn't be here to watch this video. This logic feels bulletproof because it appeals to our deepest survival instincts. But when scientists actually test this assumption using rigorous mathematics, the logic completely falls apart. Researchers decided to stop guessing and started simulating. They created artificial worlds populated by digital organisms to see which perceptual strategies would win. They pitted truth organisms, which were programmed to see the objective structure of their reality, against fitness organisms, which were programmed to see only rewards and punishments. The truth organisms saw the binary code, the voltage, and the raw data of their environment with perfect accuracy. The fitness organisms saw nothing of the truth. They only saw symbols that represented eat this or run from that. The scientists ran these evolutionary algorithms hundreds of thousands of times, to ensure the results weren't a fluke. The results were shocking, even to the researchers who designed the experiment. In almost every single simulation, the organism that saw reality went extinct. The organism that saw only fitness payoffs drove the truth seer to total annihilation. The mathematical probability that your eyes are showing you the actual structure of reality is effectively zero. It turns out that seeing the truth is a massive evolutionary disadvantage because it requires too much brain power to process complex data. Evolution selects for cheap, fast hacks, not expensive, heavy truths. While the truth organism is busy calculating the precise molecular structure of a tiger, the fitness organism has already seen a simple red flash of danger and run away. The truth is a burden that slows you down. Nature doesn't care if you are right. Nature only cares if you reproduce. This means that your brain has been ruthlessly optimized over millions of years to delete information, not to collect it. You are the descendant of a long line of creatures that survived precisely because they ignored 99.9% of the world. To understand why accuracy is useless, imagine you're trying to navigate New York City. You ask for a map, and someone hands you a map that is perfectly accurate in every detail. It includes every single tree, every pothole in the pavement, every discarded gum wrapper, and every atom of every building. To be perfectly accurate, the map would have to be the exact same size as the city itself, making it impossible to unfold and impossible to use. A map like that wouldn't help you find the subway. It would leave you lost and overwhelmed by excessive detail. A useful map is useful specifically because it is false. It lies to you about the complexity of the territory. It compresses the chaotic, twisting streets of Manhattan into neat, straight lines and color-coded tubes. It deletes the garbage, the traffic, and the architecture, leaving only the information you need to get from point A to point B. This is exactly what your senses are doing every moment of your life. Your eyes are not windows. They're a compression algorithm designed to strip away the complex truth and leave you with a cartoon sketch. We mistake the map for the territory because we have never seen the territory. We look at the simple icons, the chair, the apple, the person, and assume that's what the universe is made of. But that is like looking at the distorted, simplified lines on a subway map and assuming the actual train tracks are made of colorful ink. The map is not the world. The icons are not the objects. We are trapped in the user interface, mistaking our desktop icons for the hardware inside the machine. Consider the oxygen you're breathing right now. To your perception, the air in front of you is empty, transparent, and still. You perceive it this way because that perception allows you to move, hunt, and see predators without obstruction. But if your eyes showed you the objective reality of the air, you would be blind. You would be surrounded by a dense, chaotic storm of nitrogen and oxygen molecules, bouncing off each other at hundreds of miles per hour. If you saw the quantum fields and the atomic collisions that are actually happening in front of your face, you wouldn't be able to see the tiger hiding in the grass. You would be so distracted by the atomic complexity of the empty air that you would fail to survive. So, evolution gave you a hack. It renders the air as invisible. It tells you a lie, there is nothing here, so that you can focus on the macroscopic objects that matter for your survival. The transparency of the air is not a physical truth. It is a biological interface feature. This logic applies to absolutely everything you interact with, including the biological machinery of your own body. You feel pain, hunger, and fatigue, but you do not feel the firing of neurons or the replication of DNA. You're a user of the body, not the administrator. You're given a dashboard with a few warning lights, but the engine is hidden under the hood. If you had to consciously manage your heartbeat or monitor your enzyme levels, you would crash the system in seconds. Ignorance of the details is the only reason we function at all. If physical objects are just icons, we have to ask a much deeper and more disturbing question about the background they sit on. We assume that even if the apple is an illusion, the space the apple sits in and the time it takes to rot are fundamental. We treat space and time as the stage upon which the drama of the universe plays out. We think the stage is real, even if the actors are just costumes. But the interface theory of perception demands that we discard this safety net as well. If evolution shaped our senses to be a user interface, then space and time are not the pre-existing box that reality comes in. Space and time are just the desktop wallpaper. They're the formatting constraints of our species-specific headset. Just as a computer desktop has a 2D layout, not because the data is 2D, but because that's how the software organizes it, we perceive 3D space because that is how our brains organize fitness data. Space-time is not the fundamental reality. It is just another data structure. This brings us to the edge of a precipice that modern physics is currently staring down. For centuries, we believed space and time were the bedrock of existence, the absolute coordinate system of the cosmos. But the realization that our perceptions are purely evolutionary hacks suggests that space-time is doomed. It is not the background of the universe. It is merely the background of our simulation. We're about to find out what happens when we take the headset off. To understand how your brain constructs this desktop interface, we have to flip your understanding of perception completely upside down. You likely operate under the assumption that perception is an outside-in process, where light hits your retina, travels to the brain, and is processed into an image. You imagine your brain sits passively waiting for information to arrive, like a television receiving a broadcast signal from station. But modern neuroscience reveals that this direction of flow is largely a myth. The brain is not a passive receiver of information. It is an active generator of predictions. Perception is actually an inside-out process where the brain guesses what is happening first and uses sensory data merely to correct its errors. Your brain is constantly generating a model of the world from the top down, projecting what it expects to see onto your visual field. It does not wait for the photons to tell it what is there. It anticipates them based on memory and past experience. The sensory signals coming from your eyes are only used to update the prediction if the guess turns out to be wrong. This is why you can read a sentence with scrambled letters or missing vowels without slowing down. Your brain isn't reading the actual ink on the page. It is hallucinating the words it expects to find and checking briefly to ensure the squiggles match the hallucination. You are not seeing the present moment. You are seeing a prediction of the present moment. The most famous example of this predictive mechanism glitching out is the viral phenomenon of the dress that broke the internet in 2015. You remember the image, a poorly lit photo of a dress that half the world swore was white and gold, while the other half screamed it was blue and black. People argued furiously because they weren't just looking at a picture, they were defending their own reality. The image itself contained identical pixel values for everyone, yet the subjective experience was violently different. This happened because the image lacked clear cues about the light source in the room. Faced with ambiguity, your brain had to make a subconscious assumption about the lighting to interpret the colors of the fabric. If your brain predicted the dress was in a shadow, it subtracted the blue tint of the shadow and showed you white and gold. If your brain predicted the dress was under bright artificial light, it subtracted the yellow tint and showed you blue and black. You didn't choose which version to see, and you couldn't force yourself to see the other one. Your brain constructed a reality based on a hidden prediction, and that hallucination felt 100% real to you. The dress proved that we do not see the objective world. We see our brain's best guess about the causes of sensory data. This leads us to a definition of reality that is as poetic as it is terrifying, championed by neuroscientist Neil Seth. He argues that what we call perception is exactly the same process as what we call hallucination, with one minor difference. When you're dreaming or hallucinating, your brain is generating a world without any check against external input. The internal model runs wild, creating dragons, flying scenarios, or conversations with dead relatives. The neural machinery used to create a dream is identical to the machinery used to create your waking sight. When you wake up in the morning, the hallucinations don't stop. They just get reined in. The sensory data from your eyes and ears acts as a tether, pinning the fantasy down to a specific set of constraints. This means that your waking reality is effectively a controlled hallucination. It is a dream that is being constantly modulated by the physical world to keep it stable. We are all hallucinating all the time, but when we agree on our hallucinations, we call it reality. The rock you hold in your hand is a mental construction that happens to align with the mental construction of the person standing next to you. If the fact that you are projecting reality isn't disturbing enough, consider the speed at which this processing happens. It takes time for electrical signals to travel from your retina to the visual cortex and for the brain to process them into a coherent model. This neural lag is estimated to be roughly 80 to 100 milliseconds, which might seem negligible, but in biological terms, it is an eternity. It means that you're never living in the objective now. You're always living in the past, trapping you in a delayed broadcast of the universe. Everything you think is happening right now actually happened a tenth of a second ago. When you snap your fingers, the sound and the sight occur simultaneously in the physical world, but your brain processes them at different speeds. To prevent you from feeling like you are watching a badly dubbed movie, your brain waits for all the signals to arrive and then stitches them together into a synchronized event. It edits the timeline of your life, presenting you with a now that is an artificial construction. You're not experiencing the world live. You are experiencing a post-produced rendition of history. This delay forces the brain to be a prediction machine, because if it relied solely on outdated information, you would be unable to catch a baseball or dodge a car. If you try to catch a ball based on where your eyes tell you it is, you would miss every time because the ball has already moved by the time you see it. Your brain overcomes this by pushing its model forward in time, showing you the ball where it should be, not where it was when the light hit your eye. You are reacting to a future projection to compensate for a past delay. The present moment is a magic trick, a sleight of hand designed to hide the latency of your own nervous system. We have established that the objects you see are icons, the colors you see are data compression, and the now you experience is a delayed prediction. The external world is a simulation running on the hardware of your neurology. But if the car, the tree, and the stars are all part of the simulation, we are left with one final, devastating question. What about the user? What about the you that is witnessing the simulation? If the brain constructs every aspect of the reality you experience, it stands to reason that it also constructs the entity that is doing the experiencing. The self is not the pilot of the vehicle. The self is just another icon on the dashboard. The final illusion evolution created was not the world, but the ghost it put inside the machine. It is easy enough to accept that the coffee cup on your desk is a simulation, a mental icon representing a cluster of atoms. But now we must turn that same analytical lens toward the hand that is holding the cup. You intuitively feel that while the world outside might be an illusion, the you inside must be real. You feel anchored in your body, looking out through your eyes as if you're a pilot sitting in the cockpit of a biological machine. However, the logic of the interface theory of perception does not stop at your skin. If your brain constructs the visual reality of the external world to help you survive, it stands to reason that it also constructs the internal reality of the self for the exact same purpose. Your body is just another object in the environment. And like the apple or the tiger, your brain has to model it to interact with it. You do not experience your actual biology. You do not feel your blood pressure regulating, your enzymes digesting, or your neurons firing. Instead, your brain creates a simplified, user-friendly interface for your internal state, which we call interoception. The feeling of having a body, of being located behind your eyes, is a controlled hallucination constructed to keep the organism coordinated. This self is not a ghost inhabiting a shell. It is a data structure created by the shell to monitor its own integrity. To understand why this illusion is necessary, imagine you're playing a complex video game where you control a character running through a war zone. On the screen, you see a health bar, a stamina meter, and a hunger icon. These indicators are not the actual code of the game. They're simple symbols designed to make you panic when they turn red. If the health bar drops, you frantically search for a medical kit. If the hunger meter flashes, you look for food. The game developers created these symbols because if you had to read the raw lines of code to understand your character's status, you would die immediately. Your conscious sense of self is simply the health bar of the human organism. Your emotions are not spiritual messages from the soul. They are system alerts on the dashboard of your consciousness. When you feel hunger, you are not experiencing the complex depletion of glucose and the hormonal signaling of ghrelin in your bloodstream. You are seeing a flashing red light that compels you to perform a specific action. Eat. When you feel pain, you're not feeling the firing of C fibers. You are seeing a damage alert designed to force you to protect the avatar. The brain created the sensation of I because it needed a way to make the organism care about its own survival. This leads us to the most persistent illusion of all, the homunculus fallacy, or the idea of the little man. We all instinctively feel that there's a central subject, a me, sitting somewhere inside the head, watching the movie of reality and making decisions. We imagine a tiny pilot in the control room, pulling levers and steering the ship through the storm. But neuroscience has scoured every inch of the brain, and it has found no control room and no pilot. There is no single spot where everything comes together. There's only a massively parallel network of firing neurons. The pilot is not watching the movie. The pilot is part of the movie. The sensation of being an observer is just another output of the neural rendering engine, no different from the sensation of seeing the color blue. Your brain generates the image of the world and simultaneously generates the feeling of the self that perceives it, stitching them together to create a coherent narrative. You are not the entity experiencing the simulation. You are the simulation experiencing itself. The ego is a phantom loop, a trick of the light designed to focus the organism's attention on the survival of its genes. This realization triggers a profound form of depersonalization, stripping away the final layer of our perceived reality. We tend to think that even if the physical world is fake, our internal world, our thoughts, our agency, our identity, is the bedrock of truth. But if the self is just a user interface hack, then our identity is as arbitrary as the desktop icon for a folder. We are wandering through a double hallucination, a fake person navigating a fake world. The character you think you are is just a story the brain tells itself to make sense of the chaotic stream of sensory data. If we strip away the external world as a user interface, and we strip away the self as a user interface, what is left? If there is no physical table, and there is no me looking at the table, does anything actually exist? We have dismantled the stage, and we have dismantled the actor, leaving us staring into a void. But in this void, there is one thing that cannot be an illusion, one thing that remains undeniable even when all contents of experience are doubted. There is the experience itself. We arrive at the only fundamental truth that survives the acid test of neuroscience and evolution. The icons may be false, the self may be a construct, and the space-time geometry may be a hack, but the fact that experience is happening is undeniable. You might be hallucinating the tiger, and you might be hallucinating the fear you feel, but you cannot be hallucinating the fact that you are aware. Consciousness is the screen upon which the simulation is projected. It is the only thing in the universe we have direct access to, yet it is the one thing science cannot explain. We have found the limit of the simulation, and it is staring right back at us. We must accept a humbling reality. We will never remove the headset to see the machinery behind the curtain. No matter how hard we stare, no matter how much science we apply, we can never step outside our own neurology to see the objective world as it truly is. We are biologically condemned to perceive the interface, never the hardware. The real world, the swirling ocean of quantum fields and colorless energy, will forever remain hidden behind the veil of our sensory adaptations. We are like characters in a book trying to read the ink on the page we're printed on. The medium of our existence prevents us from seeing the mechanism of it. But this limitation is also a profound power, transforming us from passive observers into active creators. If the objective universe is silent, colorless, and scentless, then the richness of your life does not exist out there. It exists entirely within you. You are not discovering the beauty of a sunset. You are manufacturing it. The sun sends out silent electromagnetic radiation, and your brain transmutes that cold energy into the searing oranges and warm purples that stir your soul. Without a brain to render it, the universe is just a dark, silent equation waiting to be solved. Consider the music you love. In the physical world, it is nothing but compression waves pushing air molecules against your eardrum. It has no emotion, no melody, and no sadness until your brain processes the signals and assigns them meaning. You are painting value onto a valueless cosmos, adding texture and emotional weight to a reality that is fundamentally indifferent. We are the artists of the void, taking the chaotic static of quantum mechanics and sculpting it into a coherent, meaningful narrative. The world is not a stage that was set for us. It is a projector screen, and we are the film. This does not mean we are trapped in solitary confinement, completely cut off from one another in our own private theaters. While my red might not be your red, and my desktop icons might differ slightly from yours, we are navigating the same data stream. When you look at another person, you're seeing their biological avatar, a simplified icon of flesh and bone. But you know that behind that icon lies another universe of consciousness, another rendering engine building its own unique world. We are isolated dreamers who have managed to link our dreams together, creating a shared hallucination that allows us to love, fight, and build civilizations. There is no need to mourn the loss of objective truth, because the truth is likely boring, mechanical, and incomprehensible. You do not play a video game to stare at the binary code scrolling across the monitor. You play it to inhabit the fantasy. If you could see the raw code of the universe, the magic would vanish, replaced by a terrifyingly complex stream of data that no mind could endure. The illusion is not a prison. It is a playground designed to maximize your agency and your potential. Evolution hid the truth not to blind you, but to liberate you from the burden of infinite complexity. So the next time you look at your hand, do not feel cheated by the fact that you're seeing a simulation. Marvel at the complexity of the biological machine that generates it for you. You are the universe's way of experiencing itself, the mechanism by which cold matter wakes up and feels the warmth of its own existence. We may never see the world as it is, but that doesn't matter, because the world we see is the one that matters to us. We are the authors of reality, turning the dust of the cosmos into a living, breathing dream.